Welcome to Holy Week. This evening it's Holy Wednesday, and Holy Wednesday is a day of value. It's the day that we find out what we value, and it's the day that Jesus and those around him certainly found out what they valued. See, this was the day that Jesus went out to Bethany. Bethany, a little town not so far from Jerusalem, and there lived one of Jesus' favorite families. They had Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Now, we have a pretty good idea that they were a pretty wealthy family. They weren't, average suburban middle class folks by our standards. They must have been pretty wealthy. One of the ways we know they were wealthy is that when Lazarus died, huge numbers of people showed up for his funeral, which is why when Jesus then proceeded to raise Lazarus from the dead, he just, his hype just blew up like crazy because everyone knew who Lazarus was. He was a wealthy and influential person. So here they go here he goes into the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and as you might imagine, they're having a great time. They're rejoicing, they're happy, but Jesus feels a little different. He seems a little bit off. He's preoccupied. Now, ever since Jesus first entered into Jerusalem, it's said he's really intense. There's just this intensity about him that actually kind of freaks the disciples out, to the point where it says in the New Testament, it says they were afraid to ask him about it because he was so he was so intimidating, and that they didn't dare to ask him, "Hey Jesus, what's wrong?" So here he is. He's a little off. He's sitting at the table. And in the midst of all this, Mary of Bethany, who had been sitting at Jesus' feet and who knew his heart like few others, spots that something is off. And she's not quite sure what per se, but she recognizes she needs to do something. So she pulls out an alabaster jar of perfume. Alabaster, not cheap. And the perfume is spikenard, and spikenard comes from India. Now, they had things like from India and China and places like that in the ancient world. They had a Silk Road that connected the Middle East to the Far East. But it was really expensive to get. To get there, you had to pass through desert, and you had to risk bandits and all sorts of problems. So these things were not cheap. And in fact, the text tells us in a few different places that this was perfume worth 300 denarii. Now, in the parable of the vineyard, we know that workers would work for about a denarius a day. So this is a lot of money. 300 denarii, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And think about this for a second. Who has perfume worth tens of thousands of dollars just sitting around their house? Martha, Mary, and Lazarus did. They were a rich family. So Mary takes this perfume and she breaks the jar and she pours it out on Jesus' feet. Now, if you're ever going to pour perfume on somebody, generally speaking, you do not pour it on their feet. You pour it on their head. You might remember, from the psalm, "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity." It's like oil running down the beard, running down the hair and through the beard and all this stuff, right? When you anoint someone, you anoint their head. It's the most honorable part of them. What you don't anoint is people's feet. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you my feet in this video. But if you anoint somebody's feet, you're covering the lowest part, we would say the deepest, darkest part in our way of thinking. And honestly, beautiful smelling feet aren't going to stay beautiful smelling very long. So this is a very odd thing to do. And this is why, in fact, Judas Iscariot speaks up and he says, "Why this waste? This perfume could have been sold, and it's money given to the poor. And wouldn't that have been better?" And there's always somebody in the church that thinks that way, isn't it? There's always someone who says, "Man, the way we do things is so inefficient. If we just took all of this stuff that we were giving to God and we just gave it to the poor instead, Wouldn't we be making the world better and more efficient? And wouldn't this just be a better use of God's money? Of course, the Bible also records that Judas said this because he loved money, and he was hoping that since he was the treasurer, he could maybe embezzle some of this money. Judas had a money problem. And many of our churches have money problems too, if we're being honest about it. But in saying this, Judas revealed what he valued, just like how Mary revealed what she valued. She said, I think more of Jesus' feet than I think of tens of thousands of dollars. Then I think of what else could I accomplish with this money. Then I think of all the stuff I would want to buy, or all of the people I would want to help. Loving Jesus is more important than helping people. Process that one for a minute. He is that valuable. Now Judas leaves this experience, and he goes, ugh. And he goes out and he talks to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he says, how much money will you give me if I betray Jesus to you? And they say, oh. And they pay him 30 pieces of silver, 10% of the value of the perfume. As if Jesus is on 90% off sale in Judas's mind. What does he think of Jesus? No big deal. Opportunities like this come up every day of the week. Let's beware on this Holy Wednesday what we value. Let's make sure that we don't value good ethical behavior more than we value Jesus. Let's make sure that we don't value mere good works more than we value Jesus. He's better than all of it. See you tomorrow. Holy Thursday. Ooh boy, it's a doozy. So I hope you're ready. Have a good night. Welcome to Holy Week.